Hi, hey, hello. If you're new here, my name is Rain. If you're not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you stopping on by to my little corner of the internet. We have another sketchbook session this week, so if you feel like drawing along with me or being creative in general and you post it, be sure to tag me. If you want to just tell me about it, let me know in the comments. If you put me on for reasons other than being creative, also let me know in the comments. I like to know what people enjoy doing when they watch my content, and I very much enjoy engaging with you guys, so I always appreciate getting to chat in the comments. And as for me, I'm doing a very detailed thumbnail for a concept I have for a part 2 to my Dance with the Dead piece, where I basically had drawn my OC Vivian with his long deceased wife. Vivian's my immortal Victorian OC, right? So I do have a drawing of him guiding his wife out for a ballroom dance, and just it's titled Dance with the Dead, and I wanted to play on kind of the emotions and the concept, right, of Vivian and him allowing himself to become more emotionally attached to the members of the trio by engaging with things that he had initially sworn off, or he had been really anxious to engage with, things that felt too intimate or too, like, reminiscent of a past where his wife was still alive, right? So I want to do another ballroom dancing type piece, definitely not drawing the ballroom, where I am doing that with Vivian in the contemporary with Nameless, because I think she's just going to end up named Nameless at this point, right? And I want to kind of explore his character and the point in his story where he is allowing himself to find comfort in other people, right? Because that's why I made him the way I did, because I want to explore those relationships and the process of going from emotionally shut off from a traumatic and really upsetting life event to turning a new leaf and finding yourself again, or learning how to continue living after tragedy, right? And it took Vivian a while to get there, being immortal, but I definitely want to kind of explore that. And additionally, I think I very much like the idea of Vivian being hard-headed about him staying emotionally detached, because he's so aware that he has to continue facing loss because he'll live on while they continue to pass. And so now, having more immortal people in his life, he's allowing himself to make connections because those are people who won't die in 100 years or so and will be with him for a longer period of time. He's not going to, in his ideal world, he's not going to outlive them or not buy anything abnormal to something relative to the human life, right? Something like that. And so exploring that part of his character is something I really want to do in illustration. It's fun. It gives me a lot of opportunity to bring odd things that would be way more like fun and flirty for people in Victorian times into the modern day, and have people be like, wait, why is this so important to you? What? Nameless being from the 21st century, being resurrected from the dead and living in the 21st century, is totally not going to understand why learning how to dance with Vivian is so magical and important to him, right? But it's you're my best friend and I want to do something that makes you happy, right? And it's very much a not miscommunication, but a lack of communication, where I think that people can just accept the quirks of people they're with, or particularly accept parts of their personality that they might not understand fully, right? And it's something I find really cute, okay? Like, 90% of it is totally not me making my OCs that are totally not dating be cute together and dance, right? Like, a lot of my art is just me doing stuff that's fluffy and cute with my OCs, or creating pieces about disabilities. So, I have to counterbalance the sadness somehow, right? And yeah, genuinely, I just think they're adorable, and I love the dynamic. I would have brought Eris into it, but I don't think Eris could dance without killing somebody or committing a crime, reincarnate of the god of chaos. I feel like bougie dancing is just something that is inherently something banned. Like, Vivian literally said no before it was even a conceptual idea. Just illegal. No, you can't do it. You will absolutely kill somebody. The chandelier will fall. The punch is going to get spilt all over the place, and there's going to be just accidents everywhere. Just something inconvenient that would totally only happen if Eris is present, because her luck is just so bad, right? And so I figured Nameless was the OC for the dynamic, because Vivian and the trio, right? There's only 2 options. So Nameless was the one. I do want to kind of redraw and redesign my character Hypnos. I'm very firm and happy with my design for Thanatos, but I've only drawn Hypnos once. I made an OC one time. I drew him once, and I still call him an OC 2 years later, right? So I do want to work on redesigning Hypnos, and maybe seeing if I can find a way to satisfyingly bring Thanatos and Hypnos into this relationship, or find a way to make them a part of the same universe, because I very much think that these characters would make such a good not quintuple, but just such a good dynamic group. The dynamic 5, something, I don't know. I've never been good at team names or anything like that. Like, never let me pick the team name in school, things like that. So generally, this is just something that I've been working on mentally. I do have some other thumbnails I like more. I don't think I pulled them up visually when working on it, but I'll explain what I like about this piece and what I dislike later when it's closer to finished, right? So the first thing is a thumbnail, right? And then I do draw a little sketch of Eris that I really like, so you have to stick around to see that. And Nameless that I really like, and then there's another drawing I do in the sketchbook session that I think it requires a little bit more of a precursor or prior conversation, which is what this video rant is more so about, because you guys know me. I rant about one thing for 50 minutes and don't stop. So I think that I've been dealing with a bit of imposter syndrome recently. I know I mentioned in January that the art just hasn't been arting recently, and I know I started feeling better when I did my video practicing drawing bodies, and I was trying to figure out why I went from feeling so good for 1 week to feeling bad another week, and why I've been so on and off with good art 1 week, bad art another week, and not in a like quote unquote bad art, but just not feeling happy with what I'm creating. I mean, like, bad art in terms of I'm dissatisfied with the art I'm making, right? Or I just don't feel proud of it. It's not making me feel the way I usually feel when I create. Things like that, right? Not necessarily like the actual quality of the work, right? And I was sitting down and I was on YouTube Shorts, and I realized that I'm watching YouTube Shorts. And it was kind of a weird moment for me, but I just kind of like had to leave YouTube Shorts and just kind of like reassess how I've been feeling about my art recently, because a big part of me really finding my art style and really starting to love my art again, and really like make the decision to pursue my MFA and allow myself to be an artist, was me not allowing myself to engage in short form content that kind of distorts my view of art creation, right? I find that short form content is just generally really bad for me. It's bad for my mental health, and that I don't enjoy engaging in short form content. I just don't, right? So I put a time limit on Instagram when I started getting back into reels and I started feeling a dip in my feelings about my art. I wasn't feeling good about my art, and I had been watching more reels, so I put a time limit on Instagram. I can only spend this much time on it a day. And I mean, if I go over, it yells at me, and I'm like, oh, I've been on here too long, right? I've been doom scrolling, I need to stop. And it reminds me I need to get off the app, and I need to kind of re-enter the world, right? And I've kind of realized that when I get yelled at by Instagram, I just go to shorts, which defeats the entire purpose, right? And I realized that my mood's been bad about my art, and it's probably because I'm engaging in short form content that doesn't bring anything to my life, right? Most of the shorts that I get recommended are not anything that I would ever choose to watch. The YouTube Shorts algorithm is either bad for everybody or just particularly incapable of figuring out anything I enjoy watching. It doesn't recommend me anything from creators I watch. It's very much just completely different subject matters than what I consume, different topics altogether, genres that I generally have never enjoyed watching. So it's not like I watched it before and now I don't care. This account is new. This account is as old as my YouTube channel or so, because I didn't want to build my channel on the account that I watch most of the content on, right? And I find that YouTube that just doesn't know what I want in terms of shorts, and I already know that Reels isn't good for my mental health and my perception of art and reality and relationships and things like that. And so I stepped away, and I realized I can't put a time limit on YouTube without blocking my ability to be notified when you guys comment and stuff like that. So I'm just going to have to be disciplined about it. I hated using YouTube on my phone before I even had a channel, so I think I'm just going to kind of force myself to only open YouTube on my phone if I get a notification about people talking to me, right? So I can reply to your guys' comments, and I can still keep up moderately good engagement, but not have to run the risk of just going on for fun, right? I'm just going to go back to not using the YouTube app on my phone. I've had it downloaded since I've got my phone, and I just never use it. So I'm just going to go back to doing that. And I'm expecting to see a huge uplift in my mood around art and art creation again. And then another thing that I've kind of been realizing is that I just haven't been pursuing references that I love and make me feel inspired. I've been pursuing references that adhere to a pre-existing idea. And I know that sounds weird, but give me a moment. I've talked about it before on my channel. Every time I create a piece that is particularly inspired, I create the reference photo myself. All of my disability work, I posed for the reference photo and made sure that I had the exact pose and camera angle I wanted, because I hate looking for reference photos of particular body positions. I don't want to. I don't want to spend ages on Pinterest trying to find the perfect angle, the perfect perspective of somebody sitting in a particular position. I'd rather just take the photo myself, right? Get the general idea and then use references to find lighting and different items and the clothing and stuff like that. Or maybe the skin colors I want. But the pose, that just rough base pose, I always take that photo myself. So the base for my work is already acquired. I don't know if that makes sense. I think of the idea, I take the photo of the pose, and then I look for references for the other components that I want. And recently I have been thinking of ideas and then looking for the reference instead of making it myself. And I think it's kind of creating a disconnect to a crucial step in the process that's been so long-standing and important for me to process the work, right? I don't know if it makes sense, but by forcing myself to sit down or stand or hold a particular position that I want to draw, I'm forcing myself to kind of engage with the experience of it. And I think being able to do that and feel where my hand is, if I'm like touching something or if I'm leaning against the wall, having that kind of experienced perception of how the body like exists in that position, what it feels like, helps me to understand where I can be loose and stiff and understand where the body weight is leaning. Definitely a visual learner, learn by trying kind of thing. I just find it really helps me. And so I think my work has been feeling a little bit stiff recently. I haven't been creating my own references, and so I haven't been forcing myself to engage with the concept of the position, which also means I'm not trying a bunch of different positions. I'm not taking a bunch of photos to get the one that speaks to me and the concept the most. I'm finding one, and I'm like, oh, that looks good enough, and then I'm going with it. And I think it takes a part of the process that's very important for me out. And then finally, another thing that I've just been having issues with in terms of references is I feel like I go onto Pinterest and social medias and Google with a particular idea of what I want to draw. And I don't really sit there and think, well, what's just kind of calling to me? I don't know if that makes sense either. But I feel like when you see a reference that's just perfect for something that you want to create, or you see a reference that makes you think, wow, I would love to draw that, it just creates really good work instead of trying to find a reference to meet a pre-existing idea. This is a photo or a collection of photos that just clicked for you, and I just find that it gives me so much more passion than when I just go and look for a particular photo or a particular pose. And I think I've just been kind of creating a disconnect between myself and the steps of my artistic process that are generally kind of important for me to feel good about my art or for me to feel connected with my work. And so I'm also going to be putting a lot more effort into taking my own reference photos or browsing through Pinterest with no idea in mind until something speaks to me or something of that nature. And I am going to be resorting to Pinterest more. I used to do this on Instagram, the discovery page, but I don't want to spend time on Instagram because it gives me that access to that short form content that I very much don't benefit from, right? So I need to be conscious about how I'm engaging with these platforms so that I can actually enjoy my work. And I very much don't enjoy being on the internet for a long time. I work on a computer all day for my job, and so creating art is kind of a tangible process for me. And by having my phone up and scrolling through Instagram or YouTube to find those ideal sources, I just find that it takes away that tangible paper process and kind of inclines me to just keep scrolling, right? And I want my art to be something that's not super thought out. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but I don't want to have to think about the things I'm doing super deliberately. I want it to just happen in the way that feels right for me, right? I understand portions of composition, but when I'm in my sketchbook like this, that's not something I'm worried about, right? Composition's great for a full finished illustration, something I'm doing digitally or on loose paper, but the stuff I'm doing in my sketchbook isn't supposed to be a magnum opus. It's supposed to be creative fun. And I think I've kind of lost that in me just not forcing it to be creative fun by really thinking critically, does this even look good? Do I even feel comfortable with this? Do I need to cover it? And I need to get comfortable with just having bad sketches and having videos where I don't create good work or work I'm necessarily proud of. And remember that that's the point, right? This is the artistic process, and it doesn't matter if my work is particularly great or impressive. And I think that that's a disconnect that's also kind of come from re-engaging with the art community. There are a lot of art YouTubers who create really, really amazing work in their videos, and I'm like, wow, my videos aren't like that. And I'm like, I need to stop thinking like that, right? I don't need to create finished work every video. That's not the point of my channel. The point of my channel is to engage with a community of people who enjoy my art and enjoy hanging out with me, and to be an artist. And being an artist is not the creation of perfect images every time, right? So I would still be an artist if people didn't see my work, right? And I was an artist while I wasn't a good one. I was a beginner artist, very, very beginner. I was an artist long before people did look at my work, and I would create it all the same if there was no one to watch me, right? And so I think I need to remind myself and become a lot more mindful of the fact that I'm not creating art for YouTube. I'm creating YouTube videos about myself as an artist, and I'm creating art regardless of YouTube, right? I was creating art long before YouTube, and I hope to create art on YouTube for a long, long time. You know, I don't want to say forever because I'll die, right? Morbid, but I don't have forever to live, so you never know. But maybe I'll become immortal like Vivian and live out a horrendously depressing life. But yeah, so I'm an artist all the same, and I need to not let what other people who are on YouTube creating art are doing influence how I feel about myself as an artist, because that doesn't do me any good, and it doesn't do anyone any good to compare themselves that way to other artists and what they're doing and what they're passionate about doing, right? You as an artist are not the same as other people, and you're just as valid as an artist if you create one finished drawing a year to dozens, right? It's something that I need to remind myself is totally not indicative of myself, and to not let it influence how I feel about my art, you know? So it's just one of those steps in the process of getting rid of that imposter syndrome. Now that we've gone over some of my recent issues and my thumbnail is done, I don't like Diet Dr. Pepper. I live with a diabetic, and I decided I don't like Diet Dr. Pepper, but I tried it, and it was an experience. But for the thumbnail and what I intend to improve between this and the final image is I intend to elongate the frame so that his coat isn't bunched up to have that curling effect like I want. That elongating of the frame allows me to show off the legs a bit more. I do want to be more accurate to the height difference between the two characters as well. Vivian is one of my tallest, not my tallest, one of my tallest in the 6'-ish, 5'11" to 6'-ish range. Nameless is in my shortest. She's shorter than 5'1", probably 5 foot to 5'11", somewhere in there, right? And so showing off that height dynamic a little bit more is going to be important. I was trying to give him the feeling of kind of towering over, like curling downwards, looking over her shoulder. I don't think I gave myself enough space to do that, and I think I just need to accept the fact that they're going to have an awkward looking height difference. A foot height difference between two people is a bit awkward, right? Not in real life, but to illustrate and then like make it look normal, you know? So I think I'm just gonna go for it. Definitely shorten her up or make him taller in reference or in frame. And then showing off more of the legs is going to show off kind of those different, like, crucial points of the body, like the hips, the knees, probably, and the shoulders a bit more well in terms of, like, where they land on each other, in reference to each other's bodies, and help with that. Then the coat can be longer. It's supposed to go past his knee, so it should be going, like, around her calves, close to, or... No, if it's below his knees, it should be going, yeah, it's consuming her. That's the point, right? I want it to consume her, and I definitely want it to be wisping around. I'm not sure about the halter top that Nameless is wearing. It does look cute. I don't know if it's very nameless though, so I think I'm going to go back to a button-up shirt with the shorts. Then I can show off her thigh highs as well, very classic to her as a character, and it'll just feel a little bit more complete. So those are the steps for the finished drawing that I need to undertake, and the changes to the thumbnail that I need to then re-thumbnail so that they are what I want them to be, right? But generally, I don't think it's a bad thumbnail. I think it's a cute sketch. I think it's a cute concept sketch, but I can make it more dynamic, and I think my art teacher, who I don't have for the first time ever, would absolutely be disappointed in me if I saw an opportunity to make my work dynamic and didn't take it. Like, actually disappointed in me. So I'm gonna go for the more dynamic option that definitely takes up space a lot differently, feels a lot more natural, and I'm really excited. I don't know when I'll get to really work on this because, you know, school and all of that, but I'm hoping a little bit here and there very soon. As for my cute little floating sketch of Nameless at the bottom, this is where I realized that I think I might be having a bit of a imposter syndrome issue, and I just pulled out a bunch of art that really inspires me, a bunch of books that just, the work just makes me feel excited to create, and I sat down and I sketched out a pose. I sketched out the other one as well, but I'm not as happy with how that one turns out. You'll see later. But I just started sketching for the sake of sketching for fun, sketching not for a plan, but for the sake of just exploring a idea, exploring this character a little bit, having fun with it. I didn't want to care, I didn't want to think about it, I just wanted to make it, right? So I'm not pulling up a reference, which is usually a huge no-no in art. And it's usually a huge no-no for me because I get really, really confused about the proportions between calves and thighs, but sometimes just not having a reference and letting what comes out of my brain, just spilling it onto the paper, is a way of kind of reinforcing what I value in my art, if that makes sense. And we'll see a bit more of that later, but by just kind of brain vomiting onto the paper, I can see where I generally think with my art, where I generally kind of take my shortcuts, where I tend to kind of be less detailed, where I'm more detailed, how I tend to proportion out the body more. And I think that that also allows me to see my blind spots a lot better as well. Not having a reference and then getting one, or creating one and then saying, is this thigh too short, right? Is this leg too long? Is this foot too wonky? Are the facial proportions right? That shows me where my blind spots are, and then I can consider, hey, maybe it's multiple things. Maybe it's a stylistic thing as well. Maybe I'm feeling awkward because I don't draw enough forehead for characters, and that's kind of making things difficult for me because something's looking off, but I'm not placing it right. And I had that experience a little while ago where I just kept not drawing enough space for chins in my art. Like, the lips were very, very big and they kind of consumed most of the chin area, and I like big lips, but I also kind of like a good chin, right? I like to do that little like curvy triangle-y thingy under the chin and hatching it to show that divot where the lip is protruding, right? That shadow is kind of fun for me. I like it, right? And so I was like, okay, I need to but I need to like rethink how I proportion out the face in my own style versus how the face should be proportioned, and figure out where can I cut a little bit to give more chin without making the face look too long, because I also draw eyes very big, right? And so big eyes, they take up a lot of the space. If I want it to be a proportional distance from the bottom of the eyes to the nose as it would be with a real human face, it doesn't leave a lot of room for chin. So do I do it to the top of the eyes? Do I cut it both ways? Do I make less chin? I usually cover foreheads with hair, I always do wiry hair. If I did straight hair, this wouldn't work. Wiry hair? Wavy hair. Wow. I don't really like drawing straight hair. It's not as chaotic, right? It's pretty, but it's not chaotic. And I like a good chaotic hair, right? And so in that, I can generally kind of give a lot of leeway into how big the forehead actually is and how big the forehead looks. Because I have really chaotic hair. Just some days the hair is all consuming, right? Some days it's neat, some days you can tell, some days it's like, where does the forehead stop? Where does the hair begin? This is a lot, right? And so I generally rely on that to make sure that my face's proportions feel good without making the face feel oddly long. I use hair to kind of compensate for general disproportionate feelings. Like, I don't want the forehead to look too short, because then the art will look funky then too. And so I also just really need to go through the process. I do that not in the video, but I do it between the pages that you'll see later. I do spend a bit of time drawing different face shapes and trying to think about different features and how I want to proportion things out, and figuring out forehead to lips. Do I make the lips smaller? I don't want to make the lips smaller. Things like that, right? And brainstorming my own style is something I like to do because it gives me an opportunity to find things that perhaps I like even more, right? Or maybe I will learn to accept that maybe faces will look a little bit off proportion when I draw them, but it's what makes the art feel the most enjoyable to make, and it's how I like my art to look, right? And so that's a process that I think is very kind of critical to my art for me. And maybe that's kind of a science major thing, you know, just like constantly critiquing your own methods rather than doing it the more kind of feeling and emotion way. It's like, do I like this method of creation, right? And maybe I need to kind of pull away from that as well and just create my style for fun and not think about it as much, right? There's art styles that have wildly inaccurate proportions, right? And it looks beautiful, and I love their work. I love a funky style, a goofy art style, and I just don't know why I can't allow myself to let something look disproportionate in a way that's like abnormal, quote unquote, which it's not. It's not. And so in that, I decided to kind of explore the hallmarks of my style by doing a bit of an automated drawing process. Not fully, I don't have a reference, and I'm not thinking about what I'm creating, right? But I'm going out of my way to draw a person because I want to think about the things that are kind of just intuitive to me when I'm creating. How do I think about the human body? How do I think about proportioning the body? How do I approach sketching it? How do I approach making it feel right? All of these things I wanted to kind of just force myself to think about in one drawing and see where it leads me, and then I could critique how I feel about it after. Is the forehead actually too small? Are the lips too big? Do I need to make the chin more present? Things like that. These were questions that I was having. These were challenges I was having, trying to figure out how I feel about my own art style. And I was not really thinking about kind of just how do I actually go about creating my art, and is this something I'm doing on purpose, or is this something that's just kind of happening on accident that I need to undo the subconscious of, right? Because you get to a point in your art where some things just become second nature, and maybe I just let myself fall short in terms of my proportions, and then I reinforce that too many times. Because a lot of my digital work is totally fine. I flip the canvas a ton. I really put a lot of time into my proportions digitally, right? Because I don't feel like I feel like there's more consequences to it not feeling right, right? This is something that I can change infinitely without making a mess or having any problems, and yet I didn't, and now I don't like it. And I think I'm a little bit more detached from my traditional work. Like, if it looks funky at the end, it's still a medium that I have a lot less color-related strengths in. And so I feel a little bit okay with myself if I'm not necessarily the most proud, which is another thing that I think I need to really think about, because I do mostly create traditional work, and I think I should put more time into feeling satisfied with my sketches before I move on to inking them or coloring them. And I think I need to put myself in a position where I value my traditional work more. I don't treat it as kind of expendable or subpar to my digital work, and allow myself to put more effort into creating traditional work that I'm really, really dedicated to. Most of my disability work is digital because the tangibility of the physical work is just too emotional for me, and it just is harder to process mentally, right? And so I think that's another thing that I need to work on, just on an interpersonal level, on a personal level. This isn't something that is caused by anything other than my own mindset around my art, right? I'm the person who needs to create more traditional work that I'm truly proud of, and need to make myself spend more time with it so I can feel that pride about my work. That's a shortcoming for me, right? This is something that I'm just never thought to do, and thus have created this kind of personal bias or kind of like opinion for. And I can just undo that, right? I could just deconstruct that to myself, right? I taught myself it, I can unteach myself it, you know? And so I just am going to hopefully be putting a lot more effort into traditional work lately. My lichen drawing I did in my last week's video for Lobaria pulmonaria, one of those two. I'm really happy with it. Like, I really, really love the piece, and it's a traditional piece that I'm really excited to get to keep forever. You know what I mean? It's one of those traditional pieces where I just am like, I own this, and I did this, and I love it, right? Because scientific illustration is something that I'm generally really proud of and really a big fan of. So it feels good when I make a piece that feels actually just good. You know what I mean? And so in that, I want to create more works like that. I'm going to have to, in terms of scientific illustrations. I have a lot of those to do. And as I mentioned in my last video, if you guys are interested in seeing more of that type of content, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just try and update you guys here and there when I finish a few. But with this, I was kind of just really forcing myself to think about those kind of self-taught approaches to my style, right? Things that I'm just like, okay, yep, I do this way. And I did find a few things that I'm not super happy with as being like so innate to how I think, right? And so I do dislike how thin I taper off the forearm to the wrist a bit. I do want to make it a bit thicker when I have that side view going on. It's the left arm bent on her hip with the fingers pointing out, I think. My hand is so perfectly in the way at the one point of the video where I needed to answer that to myself, right? But the bent one on the left, it feels, oh no, the fingers are pointing in. It feels like it's just a bit too thin. And I was thinking about it at the very end of the process when I was putting pen to paper and thinking about how I ink my traditional work. And it's just something I need to think about more consciously next time, right? I didn't let the sketch sit, though I didn't notice it before it was too late, right? You know. And I used to have a a principle in my art where I had to leave my art for at least a day, sometimes 2 to 3, before I allowed myself to ink it, because if I don't, then I'm not really detaching myself from the work and forcing myself to think about if I like it. And that's a new thing, not a new thing, that's the thing I need to re-implement, right? I need to not ink so shortly after I finish the sketch, right? I need to sit there, I need to dwell on it, I need to think about it more. I am not good at critiquing my work fresh, right? And, I find a lot of my work that I really hate after immediately finishing it, or I'm really disappointed in myself for how it ended up looking. I feel a lot better about 2-3 days following when I'm away from the work and it's all of a sudden a past work that I've made. I'm like, wow, it's actually like really good considering, right? Or like, wow, I'm really glad I made this. And so I do think that I need to force myself to stay apart from my work more often, right? Maybe doing multiple sketches so that I can line one while still mulling over the other a bit better and a bit more consistently in my time and how I kind of approach creating art. These are things that I'm just generally a bit more excited to force myself to think about. And I feel this also could have come from me only being in one class where I am mandated to create art. I haven't been thinking in the artist mindset as much. I went on break, so I let myself relax, and then I didn't get hit with the critiquing kind of brain again. So that was something that possibly could have impacted it as well. Now, in terms of the actual process of the deteriorating part of the body, I'm playing with a concept here, and it's just what came to me, and I don't like it, right? Or I don't think I executed it even remotely good, and that's something for future me to deal with. But I was trying to think about the body as a structure and less as bones, and so I was thinking about kind of those big Greek and Roman pillars. And I was thinking about kind of just bringing the body into kind of historical architecture, right? And so thinking about the pillars for maybe the leg bones instead. And I might still think about this concept because it will definitely be really strong for crumbling to dust narratives and talking about the joint pain I experience as a chronically ill person. But I think it just looks like I don't know what way ribs go in this drawing, which is, fine, right? I can do what I want. And it doesn't matter if I look really silly with the concept I have, right? The concept's down now and I can either continue thinking about it or move on. So, it's out of the brain. So that's what matters, right? But I'm definitely conflicted about it. But I wanted to also call upon the fact that some of the staples of my art are things that don't really always work with what I'm drawing. And a lot of this is that I created a lot of disability art last year. And so a lot of my work was focused on that deterioration process, that feeling of your life kind of leaving you and your life losing its meaning, and how pain kind of impacts my perception of reality, right? I did acceptance, which is the process of accepting the fact that I'm going to be chronically ill forever and that there is no cure for me. And then I did deterioration, which was about how I feel like my body is failing me and giving up on me, and how I'm trying to grapple with the fact that, yes, I've accepted I'm going to be ill forever, but am I ready to accept that I will never feel whole or good again, right? And then I did inked consumption, which was about how interacting with people and having to perform functionality and performability or disability the way people expect you to is a kind of soul-crushing and consuming process. And then finally there was holy damage, which was me kind of going through explaining the process of the way that people of particular religions have really impacted my mental health and my self-worth as a disabled child, and how those things kind of ruined my perception of myself as an individual and has kind of led to me preferring atheism for no particular reason other than the fact that this is the one faith or lack thereof that makes me feel safe as a disabled person, right? And how not having a belief in an afterlife or a God is really, really crucial to me being able to maintain functionality and kind of continue living with my disability while I figure things out, right? And so when it comes to this piece, deterioration and kind of the distortion of flesh is just something I do a lot. I do a lot of black, inky blood, and I do a lot of deteriorating bodies because those are very indicative of articulating the emotion and the physical experience as I have them, right? And so those are things that I wanted to include. While this was mostly just what came to mind, I also was thinking about things that are critical to my style that I wanted to include so I can kind of just tell myself, how do I incorporate these and how do I approach kind of placing these objects? How do I think about them in relation to the character and the theme and all of these things, right? And so then I had to go to class, and I inked it a little bit in class, just here and there, but after class I really wanted to finish it. I didn't want to step away from this drawing in particular overnight. I wanted this to be my raw, I looked at it, I did it, I made it, this is how I instinctively approached this drawing, right? And that was something that was really important for this in testing how I would feel about it the next day, things that I was nitpicky about. And I actually really like where this started going inked-wise. There are parts like the pillar ribs that I really think look dorky, right? They don't look right in reference to the space and the body. They don't match with the other bones. I really should have thought about them more, but it was what came to mind instinctively, and that's okay, right? And I also find that I allow myself the ability to have a lack of ability within my art by letting my way of inking kind of compensate for my incompetence. Incompetence is a horrible word. Wow, I take that back, because what I'm referring to is I have a very shaky hand, and so it's very hard for me to draw straight lines and curved lines without messing up. And so I'm very reliant on my thick, bold line work to kind of hide where I struggle, and I've always known this, but I never really thought about how it plays into the fact that a lot of things that I like in other people's styles would look really bad if I executed them in mine. And if I allowed them to influence me, right, it might just make me have really wonky, wobbly art, right? Because I really am impressed when I see an artist use super thin line art for their work. And it's something that I find really, really beautiful. But it just doesn't feel right for me. And I started to wonder, is that because I'm shaky, or is it because I very much just value the bold look of it all? You know what I mean? And it was just something I was thinking about in the process, because I really, really messed up that bent arm. I mean, really messed it up. I made it way too thin. I didn't even follow my own line. And so I was just like, oh, well, I guess I gotta put a hole in the body there, because otherwise it's gonna look even worse, right? And, I mean, it's a save, but it's definitely not, like, the best save I could be doing, right? But when it comes to stylistic qualities, you know, I like showing the bones. I like doing bodies that kind of are flesh and bone. I like having skeletal pieces there. I like having flaky bits coming off of things. I like peekaboos into the body, right? And I mostly like to draw feminine bodies, right? I like to have a curvier character. I like to have a bigger-ish chest, right? And I'm always incorporating those little circles everywhere. That's something that's very, like, visibly indicative of my work, and so it's not as much something that people might not think about. Like, it's very much there. The hair has circles in it, the face has circles. I put them everywhere, right? I like to kind of block off those big curving loops. I like to put curves on the thighs, not the thigh high curve, the thigh high curve, and then another curves on the arms, all of these little things. I like to hatch kind of not super straight or consistently, you know, a little random hatch here and there. And then the kind of strong collarbone. I like to have kind of an upward curve to the shoulder. Like, I like them to go down and then up. Something that I think is very cute and I like to do in my drawings. Not super prominent, but I like to do. I like big eyes. I like kind of expressionless faces. While I do like playing with eyeballs and I do think the portrayal of emotion is important, I like a good blank stare. It's something that feels very kind of indicative of feeling chronically ill for me. Is kind of maybe a bit of a conservation of energy type thing, but I'm really just dependent on zoning out to get through a lot of interactions that I have to have, because they take up so much energy and they kind of make it really, really hard to function, right? So blank stare is kind of just making it through with the conversation, just kind of surviving the experience. And I like to draw hands. These are really poorly done hands. They're not supposed to be a focal point, and this was a sketch and I didn't have a reference, so the hands are bad, like real bad. But I did need to incorporate the hands. The hands were important because I like to have them. I like to not hide the hands. I swear I'm past that phase, and so I need to be good about it. I really do. If I do draw a character with their hands hidden, it's probably Eris and Nameless, and that's because they have, like, big sweaters. They're big sweater characters, right? And so I got very playful with this drawing near the end, where I was feeling more at home with the fact that this is a drawing that I'm drawing for the sake of having fun with it and just kind of feeling it out, feeling out the process. What do I like? What do I don't like? What does the drawing say to me that it needs, right? And in that, and in me having fun with it, I got to do a lot of hatching. I got to have a lot of careless shadows that don't really make a whole lot of sense. Ink, fun little chunky bits flying away. The only thing that when I'm in retrospect looking at and I'm like, wow, I really didn't like put any effort into that at all, is the hair. I definitely could have done the hair way, way better. It's definitely not some sort of particularly even strong suit within this drawing or within any of my, like, drawings recently. I've been pretty good about staying consistent with having at least kind of fun hair, but this just kind of ended up being poorly hatched and kind of scribbled out, so definitely not the most satisfying, but it's okay. And then, you know, the good old neck shadow I always add. This drawing really felt right, even though it's not necessarily something I'm proud of or really think is particularly, like, a good drawing for me, per se, right? It's a good sketch for what it is, but it's not something that's like, wow, I'm so amazed that I made this. But it felt so right to create, and it felt so good to just sit down and do this. And I'm really excited to see what other things I create in my process of trying to deconstruct this weird headspace that I've been in, and me kind of trying to go through the process of diagnosing why my art hasn't felt right for a while. You know what I mean? Because it feels good and then it doesn't, right? And so I think I'm on to something. I know I said that last time when I did my body video, where I really felt good and refreshed, and it was true then, and it's true now, but clearly I'm an unreliable narrator because I changed my mind after a week, right? And so, I mean, I guess to an extent, take it with a grain of salt, but my fingers are crossed that I can start kind of having a bit more of a kind of relaxed mindset in the sketching process again and kind of resolve this issue. So, you know, it's hope. I'm hoping I figured out the issue this time. And I really would like to know what your guys' thoughts are about this piece in terms of the components of my art style. Is there anything that's super innate to me and me drawing that I missed? The white highlights just haven't come up yet, I promise. They're not forgotten. I'm still the white highlight goblin that you all need in your life. But other than that, is there anything that you guys really kind of tie in with my shadow that is missing? My shadow? My art style that's missing. I don't know if you guys can tell that I haven't been sleeping good lately. But yeah, if there's something that's like you think of my art and that's what comes to mind, let me know. I'm very curious of knowing what other people associate with my art and like me as an artist with, because I don't really think about it, you know what I mean? Like, my art's my art, and I think it's kind of easy when it becomes something that just happens for you to forget what it is that makes it different to others, you know? I could pick my art out of a lineup, but I don't necessarily know what other people are seeing in it. I just know what I'm doing. I don't know if that makes sense. I think it makes sense, but I do think I'm going to, at a later date, just finish filling this page with tiny dashed hatches all the way through just to fill the page, get rid of the empty space, and have it feel nice. But for the sake of, like, going to bed and closing up this sketch and just allowing myself peace, I figured that one round of the hatching was enough to convey what I was thinking and articulate my overall feelings about the sketch. So I like it. I think I'm going to fill the whole page. I don't think it's going to look better with the whole page filled per se, but this is still a sketchbook and I can still do whatever I want in it. And it's okay if my sketches are bad. See, look, I'm doing a really good job of reinforcing my thoughts so that I don't forget them. See? I'm doing a good job, guys. And then in terms of the little flip through you're going to get while I'm doing my outro, I did spend a little bit of time before I started this one practicing drawing faces, and I had a really, really bad page that I hated, and so I made a little sticker collage because it made me feel better, and I don't think I need to be afraid to cover up art that makes me feel like not dysphoric, but like detached from my work. So I did do that. I did make a little sticker collage to kind of lift up my moods, and it really helped. And I understand why people like get sketchbooks to put stickers in, because it was really fun, okay? Like going through my stickers, like, and just finding the ones that felt right and just putting them all over each other. It was an oddly cathartic experience as well. And I think I want to add little journaling components to my sketchbook sometime. I know I annotate and kind of critique my work in the margins, but I think I want to add little, like, art journals where I just kind of talk about art for the day. And maybe that'll also help me remind myself where I stand as an artist, as opposed to kind of that issue I've been having with feeling different from consuming other artist work, right? And so I guess ultimately I also want this video for people who do create art to remember that comparing yourself to other artists is not in any way going to define your value as an artist, right? You are still a wonderful artist, even if when you look at other people's work you don't feel that way, right? You're still wonderful, right? Your work is your work, and you should be proud of that. Thank you all so much for watching to the end of this video. It really means a lot to me that you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, wherever you are. Bye-bye!